Hey, 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 welcome. Hit the subscribe button and hit the notification button so you can see my videos. And thank you so much for watching them. Now we're just going to jump right in. I'm trying to get this book done. I want it over with and we can just stop talking about the book. We can talk about other things and other cases, and you guys can find out the sheer terror that I went through in Frederick, Colorado, right off the interstate myself, and how I'm lucky to be alive today. And I will tell you guys that story. I just want to get Shanann's story out of the way. Well, according to the author, Plus I am commentating here and there about what I think, but let's just jump right into it. This is about his polygraph, and it's chapter 17. And so it says that on August 14th, around 5:45, the police called Chris and said, "Hey, man, have you heard from Shanann?" And he said no. And then around 7 a.m., they decided that they need some extra help. So they called in the CBI and FBI, and they did that press release, and they changed it from a well-being search to a missing person report. And then the police department got all those interviews that they had conducted and all that information they gathered, and they turned it over to the FBI and the CBI. And then later on that evening, they called Chris again. And they told him that they needed him to get to the station, and Chris arrived around 8 o'clock. And he talked to the agents briefly that night, and the agents told Chris that there was a possible sighting at the Walmart in Longmont. Now, the Walmart in Longmont, away from the highway in Frederick, isn't that far. It's probably like 10-15 minutes from there. So I know that it says another city, but Longmont is like a rock's throw away from Frederick. And so, the next thing is they talked about, Christopher looked at these pictures of these people that were the possible sighting, and he said that it wasn't them. It actually was a woman with some juvenile children. And so he agreed that he would come back the next day because the police said that they had more questions for him. And he left the police station around 11 o'clock. Now, they're saying that the meeting was brief, but if he got there at 8 and he didn't leave till 11, that's not very brief. But according to the author, that's what's in her book. So the author says Chris agreed that he would be back the next day, and that they could conduct another search of his home and do as thorough as they wanted, and they could be there as early as they wanted because Chris was going to stay the night with friends that night. And that they told him that they would be there as early as 6 a.m. in the morning. So then on August 15th, they did conduct that search, and that's when they found the sheet in the trash can, and they noticed that it was only one sheet, and where was the other one? And there was a pillowcase in the trash can, and the only thing that was on the sheet was like some glitter from Shanann's makeup. But 11 a.m. that day, Christopher arrived at the police department. And that's when they decided that he was coming in for that polygraph. Remember, they had already prearranged it the night before. And when they went into the interview room, the door was locked. It like automatically locks itself when they're interrogating people. But the author does state, and I don't know if we could see this in the tapes. I didn't look at it, or the YouTube videos. But they say that there was a key in there the whole time, and that they let Chris know that he was free to go and that he didn't have to do this. And so, that they told him that he wasn't under arrest and that it was just there for privacy. And that the agents that were talking to him the whole time, that they never had guns on or badges or anything that would be considered, propaganda, police propaganda, I guess. Is that a word for it, or paraphernalia? Anyway, one of those words. Anything that reminded him of an officer. And they explained the polygraph procedures to him and read him his Miranda rights, even though he wasn't under arrest. They just wanted to let him know that he did not have to talk. And he signed the paperwork that he needed to sign to consent for the interview and to consent for the polygraph. And so at 4 p.m., when the polygraph was over, she says that they advised him that he had flunked the test and that he denied anything had happened, and that he told them that the police told him in that moment he just needed to be truthful, and he admits that the only thing he lied about was the affair. And so right during this same time is when the drone is at the Survey 319, and it finds the sheet, it finds the disheveled dirt, it found or soft dirt that looked like, it had been moved, and it found the 2 black trash bags. And so the police decided that they were going to go out there. That's when they went out there, and it was that very night that they found Shanann's body around midnight and got it out of there. God rest her soul. And then the author goes into the polygraph continuously monitors your respiration and your cardiovascular functions, and that it will record your peripheral behavior. And so the agent asked Chris a series of questions before the test. She asked him ways that he could cause someone's disappearance. And he said that you can hire somebody. And then she asked him to think about possible scenarios that you could cause someone to disappear. And he said that you could hire someone to do it. You could use a person that you knew to do it. And in that moment, Christopher giggled a little bit. And then he told her that it was a hard question because he had nothing to do with their disappearance and he didn't like to think about it. And so the agent explained to him that a person that physically caused a disappearance by murdering them, that was another way a person could do it, by physically causing the disappearance by murdering them. And Chris agreed to what she was saying, and she asked him to list all the physical ways that a person could cause someone's disappearance. And then Chris stated that you could stab someone, you could shoot someone, he said you could hit them, he said you could use a blunt object, a weapon, or a gun, or a knife, and she said you could smother someone. And he repeated what she said. And she said you can strangle someone. And then right here I find it crazy that he said, right after she said you could strangle someone, he said you could hand some, and then stops saying that and says, yeah, you can all that kinds of things. And so was he about to say you can hand someone a bottle of pills? Or you can hand someone wow, what would that be? Because they even wrote it out that he said, when she said you could strangle someone, he said you can hand some, yeah, you can, all that kind of things. And he stopped himself from saying what he was going to say. So I'm very curious about what he was going to say there. And if you guys have any speculation or, anything that you might think, it says you can hand some, and it ends on SOM. And he just kept saying it was hard to think about that kind of stuff. And then she was telling him that you could drown or shock or burn someone to death. And she asked him to think of other ways that you could murder someone. And it's really creepy that Chris says that you could lure them into a trap, I guess. And that dog barking downstairs in the basement makes me wonder if because he said this, if he lured her down there into that trap. They hadn't been intimate. Maybe he lured her down there and said he wanted to do it in the basement. And he lured her. It's creepy that he, quote, said you could lure them into a trap, I guess. And then the agent asked him to explain, and he said, you could have been waiting around the corner and an accident could happen. And then he goes into getting hit by a car. So then the agent says that you could kidnap a person, and he agreed. And she said you could... after he agreed, he said you could take someone somewhere and torture them and leave them without food and water. And then he also stated that you could poison someone or beat them to death. And then she asked him if he would have an issue with that question on the polygraph test. And he said, he could definitely pass that. No big deal whatsoever. And the agent explained that she wanted him to make sure that he knew that she only wanted to know if he physically caused Shanann's disappearance. And so she told him that sometimes people could feel guilty because they caused somebody to leave, like telling their spouse they wanted a divorce and separated. And Chris said, yeah, that's why I feel like such a but that's not the word he used. And then she reiterated, telling him that the test was only going to ask if he physically caused Shanann's disappearance. And so she went into like kidnapping or murdering and things like that, not caused her to leave. And because she was upset because of your emotional conversation. And she explained again that she was only going to ask that question, those kind of questions on the test. And then next the agent told Christopher she was going to ask if he was lying about the last time he saw Shanann. And he replied, no, he wasn't lying. And then she asked for him to describe the last time that he saw Shanann, and he said that it was in the bed. Again, he said that. And Christopher said she was lying in the bed, and she told him that she was going to take the girls to a friend's house. And that he continued to say that she did not take her makeup off. I mean, he's been obsessing over her mascara and her makeup for multiple interviews. I don't understand that. And he said that morning was the last time he saw his children, when it was cycling back and forth on the monitor. And this is when he's pretending like everybody's alive. This is when they're supposedly just missing, and he is taking this polygraph before they know the real deal. So she told him to talk about the worst case scenarios and told him that if he murdered Shanann, the image he described would not have been the last time that he saw those babies and her. And that her lying in the bed would not have been the last time he saw her. And Chris agreed. And then last, she told him that she was going to ask him on the polygraph if he knew where Shanann was now. And he replied, I do not. And so she tested his ability to take the test and established what his baseline was. And basically, as everybody has a baseline when they're calm, like a certain level that their heart and their actions and their things move. So like somebody that is more antsy like me, my baseline would be higher than someone that's just more chill and don't move around a lot. So that's how they do your beginning test before you take a polygraph, and they function what your baseline is. And once they do that, they can tell when you are being deceptive. They was able to tell that he was able to follow directions and that he was suitable to take this test and that his responses were normal and it was all going to work out. So then she literally only asked him these 3 questions. Did you physically cause Shanann's disappearance? He said no. Are you lying about the last time you saw Shanann? He said no. And the last question was, do you know where Shanann is now? And he said no. And so the lady, the agent, assessed his psychological responses and to all those questions, and then she went and tested it. And when she came back, it was their professional opinion that Chris was lying. And they pretty much knew deception indicated. That's what the test said. And that every time he was answering the questions, it was deception indicated. Oh, my hair's falling out. And then the last thing the author says in this chapter was that Christopher remained in the room while the agent was scoring his test, and he watched videos of the girls. We could hear them laughing and having a good time on those videos in that YouTube recording of that confession. And when the agents got back, they had a printed picture of Bella and Cece, and they put it on the table in front of Chris. And this is when they turned up the heat, and they informed him that it was clear that he was totally lying and that he did not pass that test. And he just said, okay. And the agent told him that now it was time to bare your soul, pretty much. And they wanted to know what really happened that day. And he stated, I didn't. And then he said, I didn't lie on the polygraph, I promise. And the agent told him, it's time. And he asked him to stop and take a breath. And that is the end of chapter 17. The next chapter is the first confession. We all know this is where he blames Shanann. And so I will be doing that tomorrow. Let me see how long it is. Oh, it's a doozy. But I will, like, again, I won't be posting this many videos a day. I just definitely want to get through this book so I can give you guys my opinion and move on to a different case. Thank you. Bye.